Can this be real? Is it legit? Is the price tag realistic? Can you sell this watch again? All these questions and many more are in front of you when you have a vintage watch. And in this video I present you a severe case, and I think we have some takeaways from that. Welcome to Caseback Watches. My name is Tim, and in this episode I have a very special watch for you brought in by a friend. And he told me one day that he owns that Speedmaster, Omega Speedmaster Professional from 1968, hand wound. And I thought, okay, you realize that this watch could be worth a shitload of money. And he wasn't aware of that because he bought it in the mid-80s as a, he was in school back then, finished school, and then he bought it from a private person for, let's say, 1,200 Deutsche Mark, the currency before the euro, so not really expensive. And I thought, when that watch is in original condition, when it's legit, then this is some sort of a Grail watch, vintage Grail for that guy. And my plan, of course, was at that state that I should check that watch to handle that interesting piece, to learn something from it. And I've learned a lot. And I mean, you have read the title of this video and you've checked the thumbnail, and so you know there is something wrong with that watch. But I think it's an interesting journey, an interesting examination I'd like to share with you. So we go into the lightbox in a second and I show you every stage of that process, how to determine if this watch is real, legit, from 1 year and so forth. But little disclaimer, I don't explain every screw there, okay? I didn't want to make that 1 hour long video. I went through these elements you can spot yourself, all right? The most important key factors that can determine if a watch, that particular model, is real or not. And you can definitely copy that method for other Omega watches, definitely. You can alter it a bit for other brands, then you have to figure out the same numbers, but then they are on different places. But all right, enough introduction now, let's do it. Let's go into the lightbox, let's check out that watch, let's find out if it's legit or not. All right, and here we are with the suspect Omega Speedmaster Professional. Here we are with that watch, with that iconic look. And our job now is to find out what's wrong here. And if you are a speedy collector, then you will see several things right now. But we have to remember this watch was bought in the time before the internet. So all the research we can do in minutes, all the comparisons via Google image search, all of this was impossible before the internet. You had to check books, you had to buy books, and so this was very time consuming. And so let's be tolerant here. But I will go now through the elements that you must check when you have a vintage Omega in front of you. So first thing is the crystal. The crystal has a little Omega sign in the middle. Impossible to see on camera. Very sorry for that because it's tiny. You have to angle the watch like this, and then you have to check with a magnifier or loop if that thing is there, if that thing is present. If not, then it's not the end of the world. That means only that the crystal was replaced with a generic crystal, but of course it's the real deal when you have that little Omega sign there. So the second thing you have to do, you need some numbers. You need some numbers, and I will show you exactly which one. And here you have the case back with that iconic image here with that horse, all good until now. And now you have to open it. If you cannot open it, then let's bring it to the watchmaker. I've brought this watch, in fact, to the watchmaker because it was very, very tight, and he opened it, and now I can't open it myself. But long story short, here you see now the movement, and that's exactly what we need, because if you look closely, then you see on the movement number, and you see the movement specification itself. So that means that this longer number is a, let's say, production number of the movement. With that number you can determine on the internet with some sheets the year of production of the movement. And the shorter number, that's in fact the movement itself. This here is an 861 movement. That means 17 joules, 20,600 beats per hour. and a power reserve of 38 hours. And the production number here says that this movement was produced in 1969. And now we have to check the next number, which is the reference number. And you find that reference number inside of the case back, on the inside of the case back. So there we go. And our reference number here is 145012. And then you have that 67, and this is for the production year. And now it's getting complicated. What's going on? I mean, there is quite a bit of a span between these dates. But we could assume that the case was produced first and then it waited in a stockpile, and then they used it 2 years later for the assembly. All possible. So not the end of the world. But with that reference number, we can go now on Google image search and we can look it up. And we can compare our watch to legit watches with that reference number on Google image search. And by the way, if you look at this Speedy here, I mean, we all know the iconic look. What's wrong with that case here? What's wrong with that case? I mean, normally you have these dominant lugs on Speedies, and here you have a rather simple case, but with the original Omega Caseback. What's going on? And now I can tell you the diameter of this watch is 39.5, which is completely impossible, because this reference I've mentioned there was produced in 42, and now it's over. Now it's over. Now you could stop, but we as watch geeks and nerds, we want to know the entire story. So let's carry on here. So the case is too small for this reference, but how is that possible? How's that possible with that original caseback and everything? And the explanation is in fact that this comes from an older reference. This case is most likely from a 2998-3 Omega Speedmaster. That was a very early model from the late 50s to early 60s. In fact, my notes here show me 1959 to 1962, 1963. But for us, this is of course a catastrophe, because now we have a case from the early 60s and a movement from the late 60s. And if you see now that the bezel here and the dial fits that case, most likely is everything you see here except the hand from that older reference, from that 2998-3. But when you Google that reference, this older one, then you see another set of hands. And so now it's getting really, really complicated. In fact, what we have here is most likely a case from, let's say, 1960, a case back, believe it or not, from 1967. Then you have a set of hands from the late 60s, most likely, and so nothing fits really. They just mixed it all together with the result that we have something very, very odd now, very odd. And so we must accept here that we can see something very coherent looking at first glance. I mean, again, remember the time before the internet, and if you see this watch, the aging is okay. In fact, for a 60s watch, that would be a very good condition. Even without flaws, without damages. Of course, there are characteristic scratches all over the watch, as you would expect it. But from an aesthetic standpoint, there is nothing really odd. But we know it's all wrong. By the way, functionality, of course, is there, fully functional. It's a hand-winding watch, feels amazing, feels great. I love these old Omega calibers. They're relatively slow ticking, and this is a very characteristic feeling here. There's a bit of a bounce back, if you know what I mean. When I wind it, and you have a bit of a bounce back, which is pretty cool. And then you can set the time with position 1. Also feels very good, very precise. It's just a beauty, this movement, really. And then you can set, you can start the chrono with that push-in number 1, tachymeter scale here to measure velocity, speed, and then you can reset it, and this works fine. It's exactly on position 0 here, and so everything's great there. And after all, I must say it's a pretty good-looking watch. I mean, purists and real Omega collectors will hate me for that, but it's not a bad-looking watch. Not at all. Not at all. It's a very pleasant size, very organic look, and so not bad at all from if we see only the aesthetic of the watch. Okay, what to do now? What's the verdict now? I mean, we don't have a watch police that can tell you what you should do with your watch and what you cannot do. And my opinion here is very simple. Imagine yourself in a nice vintage car. And it's big fun to drive the car. You like the look, you like the handling, but you're fully aware that the machine is from 1968 and the rest of the car is from 1962. But it's fun to drive it. I mean, and so my advice here is just carry on. Just drive that car, wear that watch, have fun, enjoy the feeling, enjoy the look. What you shouldn't do though is to sell it as a certain reference. You cannot sell this Omega here presented in that video under a certain reference. This would be close to fraud if we use legal terms here. So you cannot do that, but you can enjoy it in your daily routine, and that's actually not so bad, because maybe you know that feeling when you have a very, very old, very costly watch, very expensive timepiece on the wrist, decades old. Sometimes we're a bit intimidated, sometimes it's a bit stressful to wear that watch because we worry so much. It is the money, and we know exactly that it isn't replaceable so well, right? And so this watch might be not legit, might be a Franken watch in our terms here, but it can be big fun to wear it. And to my friend, now if you're watching this, you should definitely wear that watch. All right, that's all for this video. I had a bit of help from the German Uhrforum. Thank you very much, guys, for the information provided there. And dear viewer, thank you very much for your attention, and until next time.